Welcome to another story written by Oracle 1. The Eldritch Horrors of the Overgrown Graveyard. Chapter 1. The graveyard did not appear on any modern map. Nathan discovered that only after driving 3 hours through rain-soaked backroads, stopping twice at abandoned gas stations, and unfolding 3 separate county records across the hood of his truck beneath a flickering street lamp. Blackwood Cemetery. Established 1811, closed 1926. No explanation given, no record of relocation, just a note scribbled in faded ink across one corner of the archive copy. Ground declared unsuitable for visitation. Nathan had laughed when he first read it. Now, standing before the rusted iron gates with rain dripping from the brim of his coat, he no longer found it amusing. The cemetery stretched beyond the entrance in uneven shadows, swallowed by neglect and years of unchecked growth. Trees leaned inward over crumbling gravestones, their twisted branches knotting together high above like ribs closing around a wound. Thick ivy smothered entire sections of stone wall, while patches of dead grass broke through the mud in pale, brittle strands. Nothing moved, not even the wind. The silence disturbed him more than the darkness. Forests always made noise. Insects, branches, animals shifting somewhere unseen. But here, nothing. The rain itself seemed quieter within the cemetery grounds. Nathan adjusted the strap of his satchel and stepped closer to the gate. The metal chains wrapped around it had long since rusted through. One side hung slightly open, swaying almost imperceptibly despite the still air. The opening was narrow, enough for a person to slip through. He hesitated, then sighed softly. "Just an old graveyard," he muttered. His voice sounded wrong here. Too flat. The sound didn't carry naturally. It felt absorbed, swallowed. Nathan pushed through the gap in the gate. The moment he crossed the threshold, the temperature dropped. Not sharply, gradually, like descending into deep water. He paused immediately, glancing back toward the road behind him. The headlights of his truck glowed faintly through the rain beyond the trees. Comfortingly distant, Nathan turned forward again and switched on his flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness in a pale cone, illuminating rows of graves nearly consumed by weeds and moss. Many of the headstones had cracked entirely, split down the center as if forced apart from within. Others leaned at impossible angles, half sunken into the mud. He walked slowly, carefully. Mud clung heavily to his boots. The smell here was strange. Wet soil, rot, and beneath it, something salt-like. Ancient, a scent that did not belong inland. Nathan frowned. The flashlight passed over another headstone. No name. The surface had eroded completely smooth. Another. And another. Most of them were blank. "That's unusual," he murmured. His work as a historian had brought him to places like this before. Forgotten burial grounds, abandoned churches, plague sites left untouched for centuries. But this place felt different. Not abandoned. Avoided. The trees thickened deeper into the cemetery, their roots pushing upward through graves and pathways alike. Several stones had been entirely lifted from the earth, tilted sideways by the slow pressure of growth beneath them. Nathan stopped beside a large mausoleum near the center of the grounds. Unlike the surrounding graves, it remained mostly intact. Its stone surface was dark with rainwater, vines crawling across the walls in thick tangled patterns. Strange carvings covered the entrance, spirals, overlapping circles, symbols worn nearly invisible by time. None of them looked religious. Nathan stepped closer. The carvings disturbed him immediately. Not because he recognized them. Because he almost did. The shapes seemed familiar in the way forgotten dreams sometimes felt familiar, hovering at the edge of memory without ever becoming clear. He raised his flashlight. The beam trembled slightly across the stone. There were words beneath the carvings. Faint, chiseled deeply enough to survive the years. Nathan crouched closer, brushing moss aside with gloved fingers. The letters emerged slowly. Not Latin, not English, something older. The moment his fingers touched the stone, a sound echoed through the graveyard. Nathan froze. It was not loud, not dramatic, just a wet shifting noise. Somewhere beneath the earth, his flashlight jerked toward the trees. Nothing moved. The silence returned. Instantly, Nathan's pulse quickened. "Animal," he whispered, but the word lacked conviction. The smell in the air had strengthened. That strange salt scent, sharper now, like seawater left too long in darkness. Nathan stood slowly. The flashlight flickered once, then steadied. Rainwater dripped steadily from the trees overhead. Except, no drops struck the ground nearby anymore. Nathan noticed it gradually. The rain still fell beyond the cemetery walls. He could hear it, but within the graveyard, the air had become still again. Dry. The droplets hanging from branches above remained frozen in place. Not falling. Nathan stared upward. His breath slowed. That's impossible. The flashlight dimmed briefly, then brightened again, and somewhere ahead, something breathed. Not human breathing, not animal. Far too deep, far too slow. The sound rolled through the darkness like distant waves moving beneath stone. Nathan turned sharply toward it. The beam swept across crooked graves and tangled roots, then stopped. A figure stood between the trees. Tall, unmoving. At first he thought it was another monument. Its shape blended too naturally with the shadows. But then, it shifted slightly. Not walking, not swaying, unfolding. Nathan's stomach tightened. The flashlight trembled in his hand. The figure seemed impossibly thin, its limbs too long, bent at angles that made no anatomical sense. Dark strands hung from its body like soaked fabric or rotting seaweed, obscuring most of its shape. And its face? Nathan could not focus on it. Every time his eyes tried to settle there, his vision blurred violently, sliding away from the details as though his mind refused to process them. The breathing sound deepened. The figure tilted slightly. Watching him, Nathan took a step backward instinctively. The mud beneath his boot shifted. A soft crack echoed below him. He looked down. The earth at his feet had split open slightly. Not a sinkhole, not collapse. Something beneath the soil had pressed upward. Slowly, deliberately, Nathan backed away again. The crack widened. Thin black water seeped through the opening, carrying that same ancient salt smell with it. The figure among the trees moved closer. Not by walking. The distance between them simply shortened. Nathan's pulse hammered. "No," he whispered. The flashlight flickered violently now. The shadows between the graves deepened unnaturally. And from beneath the cemetery, came the sound of more movement. Not one thing, many, shifting below the earth, awakening slowly beneath the graves where they had waited far too long to remain buried. Chapter 2. The earth continued to move beneath the graves. Not violently, not like something clawing upward. The motion was slower than that. Steady, patient, as though the cemetery itself breathed beneath Nathan's feet. The cracks in the mud widened inch by inch, black water seeping through the openings in thin streams that reflected no light from his flashlight. The smell flooding from below intensified immediately. Salt, rot, and something older still. Something vast. Nathan backed away from the split earth, his boots sliding slightly in the mud. The figure between the trees remained motionless. Watching, the rain beyond the cemetery walls still fell heavily, but none of it touched the graveyard anymore. The droplets hung suspended at the edge of the grounds like beads of glass frozen in midair. Nathan's breathing became shallow. "This isn't possible," he whispered. The graveyard answered, not with words, with sound. A low vibration rolled beneath the ground, deep enough that he felt it in his ribs before he fully heard it. The nearby gravestones trembled faintly, loose dirt spilling from their bases. Then, whispers. Not one voice. Many. Soft. Layered. Too faint to understand. Nathan turned sharply toward the trees. The figure had moved closer again. Not walking. Never walking. The distance simply changed whenever he looked away. His flashlight beam trembled across it. The thing was taller now. Or perhaps it had always been that tall. Its limbs folded inward and outward in ways that made Nathan's eyes ache when he tried to follow them. Long strands of black material hung from its body, shifting slowly despite the complete absence of wind. And behind it, more shapes stood among the graves. At first he mistook them for crooked headstones. Then one of them tilted its head. Nathan's stomach tightened violently. "No," he whispered. The whispers beneath the ground grew louder. The flashlight flickered again. For a brief second, the beam revealed the shapes clearly. Dozens. Tall. Thin. Standing perfectly still between the graves. The light steadied, and several of them were suddenly closer. Nathan stumbled backward instinctively. The mud shifted beneath him. His heel struck stone. He nearly fell. The whispers stopped immediately. Silence crashed over the cemetery. Heavy. Absolute. Nathan didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then, a voice emerged from the darkness ahead. Not spoken aloud. Felt. A sound inside his skull rather than his ears. "You should not stand above us." Nathan's breath caught painfully in his throat. The flashlight jerked wildly through the trees. "There's someone here?" he called. His voice sounded small, thin. The cemetery swallowed it instantly. No echo returned. The voice came again, closer this time. "You opened the boundary." Nathan shook his head. "I didn't open anything." The earth beneath the graves shifted harder now. A wet grinding sound echoed below the soil, like stone dragging slowly against stone beneath deep water. Nathan backed toward the mausoleum. The carved symbols across its walls seemed different now. Not static. Subtle movement rippled through them when he wasn't looking directly at them, the spirals twisting slightly beneath the moss. His pulse hammered. "What is this place?" he whispered. The figures between the graves tilted in unison. Every movement perfectly synchronized. "The place beneath memory." Nathan's chest tightened. The words made no sense. And yet, part of him understood them instinctively. Not intellectually. Some deeper part of his mind reacted to them with immediate terror. The flashlight dimmed again. The black water spreading from the cracked earth had begun flowing through the graveyard paths in thin winding streams, collecting around the gravestones. Nathan noticed something moving beneath the surface of it. Not reflections. Shapes. Large. Slow. Passing underneath like massive bodies drifting far below dark ocean water. His stomach twisted violently. The cemetery wasn't flooding. The water wasn't coming from rain. It was rising from underneath. The breathing sound rolled through the graveyard again. Deeper now. Closer. Nathan pressed himself against the mausoleum wall. The stone felt unnaturally warm beneath his coat. Not heated. Alive. He jerked his hand away instantly. The whispers beneath the ground surged louder. Not random. Rhythmic. Repeating something. Nathan strained to listen. At first it sounded like nonsense. Broken fragments. Then, he understood one word. Below. The voices repeated it endlessly. Below. 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 Nathan stared at the cracked earth. The black water bubbling upward. "No," he whispered. The voice inside his head answered immediately. "You hear them now." The same phrase from the letter. Nathan's pulse spiked. "You sent that letter?" Silence. Then, all the figures among the graves bent slightly forward at once. Like listeners. The voice returned. "You were called." Nathan shook his head violently. "No, I came here because," his words stopped. "Because why? Because the letter interested him?" Because something about it had unsettled him enough that he couldn't ignore it? Or because some part of him had already recognized the symbols on the mausoleum before arriving? Nathan's breathing slowed. A memory surfaced unexpectedly. Not recent. Childhood. Rain tapping against windows. His mother's voice speaking softly in another room. An old leather-bound book hidden beneath floorboards. Pages filled with spirals and impossible shapes. Nathan's chest tightened painfully. "No," he whispered. The mausoleum wall behind him vibrated faintly. The stone door at its center creaked. Not opening fully. Just enough for darkness to appear within the narrow gap. And from inside came the sound of water. Deep water. Moving slowly against stone. Nathan stared at the opening. The smell pouring from it was overwhelming now. Salt. Decay. Ocean depths untouched by light. The figures among the graves remained still. Waiting. The voice returned once more. "Your blood remembers the path." Nathan's vision blurred. His knees weakened suddenly. Fragments of memory flashed violently through his mind. His mother crying quietly at night. His father burning papers in metal barrels behind their home. Whispers about the old family line. Warnings never explained. And always the spirals. Always the spirals. The ground trembled. Harder. Several nearby graves collapsed inward entirely, swallowed by widening cracks. Black water flooded upward from below, carrying pale shapes that surfaced briefly before sinking again. Hands. Human hands. Nathan staggered away from the mausoleum entrance. "No," he whispered again. The voice sharpened. "You left us sleeping too long." The figures began moving closer. Not walking. Appearing nearer each time the flashlight flickered. Nathan realized suddenly that the beam no longer reached them properly. The darkness around their bodies absorbed the light entirely. The cemetery seemed larger now. Far larger. The graves stretching endlessly into shadow where no boundaries should exist. Nathan's heartbeat thundered in his ears. "What are you?" he demanded. For the first time, the figures answered together. Not inside his mind. Aloud. Their voices layered impossibly deep. Ancient. Wet. "We are what waits beneath all endings." The earth split open directly in front of Nathan. A massive crack tore through the mud with a deafening sound, gravestones collapsing into darkness below. Black water surged upward violently, and something beneath it opened an eye. Not a human eye. Not an animal's. Something enormous. The pupil stretched vertically through the darkness beneath the earth, larger than Nathan's entire body. Its surface reflected shapes that could not exist, twisting coastlines, drowned stars, endless spirals rotating slowly in impossible skies. Nathan stumbled backward in horror. The eye looked at him. And suddenly, Nathan understood why the graveyard had been abandoned. The dead here were never buried. They were fed downward, offered, layer after layer, generation after generation, not to keep something in, but to keep it asleep. And now, it was waking because of him. Chapter 3. The eye beneath the graveyard did not blink. It simply watched. Nathan stood frozen at the edge of the light sky to earth, rainless air pressing heavily against his skin as black water churned far below. The pupil stretched endlessly downward, vanishing into impossible depth where faint shapes drifted like drowned continents beneath the surface. His flashlight slipped from his numb fingers. It struck the mud beside him and rolled toward the crack, its beam spinning wildly across the cemetery. For brief moments of light, Nathan saw the figures among the graves more clearly. And wished he hadn't. Their bodies were not bodies at all. They resembled people only from a distance. Up close, they seemed assembled incorrectly. Limbs bending in too many places. Torsos stretched unnaturally long beneath layers of dripping black strands that moved like living seaweed. Their faces remained impossible to focus on, every feature sliding subtly out of place whenever Nathan tried to comprehend them directly. The flashlight beam swept across them, then vanished into the crack below. Darkness swallowed the graveyard completely. Only the eye remained visible now. Vast, ancient, watching him from beneath the earth. Nathan's pulse hammered painfully. "What are you?" he whispered. The answer came immediately. Not from the figures, not from the eye, from underneath reality itself. The first thing buried. The words shook through his bones. The ground trembled harder beneath him. More graves collapsed inward with wet cracking sounds, entire sections of cemetery sinking slowly into widening darkness below. Black water surged upward through the fractures, flooding around Nathan's boots. The water was warm. That realization struck him with immediate horror. Not heated by weather, warm like blood. Nathan stumbled backward from the crack. The figures shifted closer instantly. Not walking, never walking. The distance between them simply ceased to exist. One now stood only a few feet away. Its shape towered over him. And the smell, salt, decay, ancient ocean sealed beneath stone for centuries. Nathan's stomach twisted violently. The figure bent slowly toward him. Its face remained blurred, unfinished, but something moved beneath the shifting darkness where features should have been. Too many eyes, opening and closing slowly beneath translucent skin. Nathan gagged. "No," he whispered. The figure tilted its head. "Your blood remembers us." Fragments of memory slammed into Nathan's mind again. His father standing in candlelight, speaking softly to unseen things beyond dark fields. His mother screaming, the sound of dirt being shoveled over something still moving. Nathan staggered backward, clutching his head. "No." The voice deepened. "You were born from the keeping line." Nathan's breathing became ragged. The words crawled through him instinctively. The keeping line. Not worshippers, not servants, wardens. The realization struck with crushing force. His family had not abandoned this place. They had guarded it, generation after generation, feeding it, appeasing it, keeping it sleeping beneath the graves. And Nathan, by returning, had broken whatever ritual maintained that sleep. The eye beneath the cemetery widened slightly. The movement alone caused the earth to split further. Trees groaned loudly around the graveyard, roots tearing upward from the mud as the ground shifted beneath them. And from below, something enormous began rising. Not fully, only enough for Nathan's mind to fail against the shape of it. He saw fragments, vast curved surfaces moving beneath black water. Textures that resembled flesh and stone simultaneously. Endless folds unfolding slowly upward from impossible depth. And everywhere, eyes, opening one by one beneath the surface. Watching him, the figures around the graves bowed their heads. Reverent, terrified. Nathan's legs weakened. The voice beneath reality returned. "You were meant to continue the silence." "I didn't know," Nathan whispered desperately. The eye focused harder upon him. And suddenly, Nathan understood something far worse. This thing was not waking now. It had never truly slept. It had been listening, dreaming beneath the earth, growing slowly through the dead offered to it over centuries. Learning, waiting. The cemetery had never been a prison. It had been a mouth. Nathan backed away until his shoulders struck the mausoleum behind him. The stone door stood fully open now. Darkness waited within, and deep inside, something called to him. Not with sound, with familiarity. Nathan turned toward the entrance. The spirals carved across the stone walls twisted slowly now, visibly moving beneath the moss like living symbols crawling across flesh. His chest tightened painfully. The voice softened. "Return below." Nathan stared into the darkness. And somewhere deep within himself, something answered. Not verbally, instinctively. A pull. Ancient. Inherited. His blood did remember this place. Not consciously. But older parts of him did. Generations buried beneath generations. Rituals passed silently through family lines. Fear taught young. Warnings never explained. Nathan realized with growing horror that he had been moving toward this place his entire life. The letter had not summoned him. It had only reminded him. The figures surrounding him stepped closer. The black strands hanging from their bodies drifted upward now, floating as though submerged underwater. The boundary weakens, they whispered together. The eye beneath the graveyard widened further. The black water surged violently upward from the cracks. And then, Nathan heard screaming. Not around him. Below. Thousands of voices buried beneath the water. Human voices. Layered together in endless agony. The dead. Not consumed. Not destroyed. Trapped. Nathan's breath caught painfully. They're still alive, he whispered. The figures tilted toward him. Not alive. The correction carried terrible certainty. Remembering. The screams below rose louder. Nathan staggered toward the mausoleum entrance. The darkness inside shifted slowly. And from within, something stepped forward. Human. Or once human. Nathan froze. The figure emerging from the darkness wore old burial clothes rotted nearly beyond recognition. Mud and black water dripped steadily from its body. Its skin hung loosely against exposed bone, stretched thin from centuries underground. But its face, Nathan's breath stopped. It was his father. Not exactly. Not living, but recognizable enough that terror nearly collapsed his knees beneath him. Its hollow eyes fixed on Nathan. Its mouth opened slowly, and his father's voice emerged. Close it. Nathan stared in horror. You're dead. The corpse nodded once. Slowly. Painfully. Yes. The voice cracked wetly in its throat. But not enough. The ground shook violently beneath them. The enormous thing below continued rising. Nathan looked back toward the graveyard. The eye watched everything. Patiently. Hungrily. What do I do? Nathan whispered. His father's corpse lifted one trembling hand toward the mausoleum. Go below. The words hollowed Nathan instantly. No. You must. The corpse stepped closer. Black water poured from its mouth as it spoke. It wakes fully if the line ends. Nathan's chest tightened. You mean me? The corpse nodded again. The keeper enters willingly. The realization crushed through him all at once. This had always been the ending. Not sacrifice. Replacement. Each generation feeding one of their own into the thing beneath the cemetery to keep it dreaming. Nathan backed away from the mausoleum entrance. No. The eye beneath the earth focused entirely on him now. The pressure of its attention became unbearable. Reality itself seemed thinner around the graveyard, the sky above twisting slowly into shapes that resembled vast spirals hidden behind the clouds. The figures whispered together. The boundary opens. The screams below intensified. Nathan's father stared at him with hollow pleading eyes. If you leave now, the corpse whispered, it follows. Nathan's breathing faltered. The black water had begun spilling beyond the cemetery walls now, flowing slowly into the surrounding fields. And where it touched the earth, things moved beneath the soil. Large things. Awakening. Nathan understood then. There had never been only one graveyard. There were others. Many others. Scattered everywhere. Feeding downward into the same sleeping abyss beneath the world. The keeping lines had merely delayed something inevitable. The eye blinked slowly for the first time. The movement shook the entire cemetery. Nathan closed his eyes. His father's final words reached him softly through the trembling dark. You were born already buried. Then Nathan stepped into the mausoleum. The stone door slammed shut behind him instantly. Darkness swallowed everything. Outside, the graveyard became still again. The black water slowly receded beneath the earth. The cracks sealed. The figures among the graves faded back into shadow. And deep below, The ancient thing settled once more into dreaming silence. Years later, travelers would occasionally pass the old cemetery road at night and glimpse faint lights moving among the overgrown graves. Some claimed they heard whispers through the trees. Others spoke of a lone figure standing near the rusted gate, watching silently from the darkness. A man wearing a long coat soaked black with seawater, waiting patiently beside the entrance, listening, making certain the boundary remained closed, until the next voice in the bloodline remembered the path back home. The end. For more stories, like and subscribe.